Okay, so we went through how to look at the data, we went through how to set up a policy and how to do some billing based on that. So let's talk about implementing some network policy. So this is done very simply in the same way that we do all the other network policy in Sonar, and if you're not familiar with this, I'd recommend going and watching the provisioning videos before you go any further in here. But what we do is jump into network, create an address list, and if you're familiar with the address list functionality from the last videos, you'll notice we have an option down here to select one or more usage-based billing policies. So all this does when we make the address list here is in real time we'll put users into this address list if they've exceeded their cap in one of these policies. So we could use this to implement something like a shaping rule that would limit users down to some lower speed if they've exceeded their cap, or we could redirect them to a splash page and tell them to log into the customer portal and buy more usage in real time. And this address list gets updated in real time, so if they were to purchase more usage and now they're no longer over their cap, they'd get removed from that address list right away, and then that policy would be lifted. Let's talk about how data gets into Sonar. So there's a couple of ways that we do authentication and policy enforcement in Sonar. We can use a radius server that we can implement something like PBPoE or some other radius-backed method. And we can use inline devices like a Procera or a MikroTik to do policy enforcement in the network, or we can use both. And so we'll look at the data from these different places in order to determine where to get the data from. So let's start with radius. Let's say if we go back and look at my Angie account, you can actually see this live on here. Let's say we are using radius and it's PPPoE that I'm using for my authentication mechanism. So if I go to my network tab and look at radius, you can see I currently have an active radius session, and it's pulling data usage in for me in real time. Sonar just goes and looks at the radius accounting on your radius server, and we pull that data in and we store it as data usage. Our other option is to collect it from an inline device. So if you're using Procera, then all the shapers you have built on your Procera that have the byte counter enabled, and we can help you set this up if it's something you don't know how to do, but as long as the byte counter is enabled on the shaper, we'll pull that data usage from the Procera in real time, and we'll store it in here, and it will be exactly the same as if we'd gotten it through radius. You'll see the breakdown by the different shapers when we look at the data usage chart. So if I make this for today, whereas here we have a breakdown by radius session IDs, what we would have here is a list of all the different shapers the users having applied, and then which Procera we're getting it from. We can also deliver data in here through the API. If you have a completely custom method you've made, there's an API endpoint we can use to deliver data into Sonar, and that's in our API documentation. And again, if you need any assistance or direction on that, feel free to shoot us an email or give us a call. And then very shortly, the last way we'll have is we'll be launching an option to deliver data through NetFlow into Sonar. And we'll be able to take that data and store data usage. And if you're not familiar with NetFlow, it's now a kind of standard for delivering usage data into network monitoring systems, and we can help talk through that with you as well. But it's supported by a lot of different devices, so if you're not using any of the manufacturers we talked about, or the current equipment you're using is not supported in Sonar, as long as it can export NetFlow data, we'll be able to get that into Sonar as well. So the last thing to look at here is editing data. Let's say we had some data usage in the system and it was inaccurate for some reason, or we needed to make a change for it. As long as you're an account super user, you can click this Edit Data Usage button, and I can make any kind of change I want here to modify this data in real time. So this is the raw data we have stored in the database. It's kept in bytes. So you'll see if I just put a 1 at the end of our download, that's going to immediately jump us up to 32 gigs. Or I could come in here and maybe we want to increase the upload, and that's brought us up by a little bit. We only have a very low amount of upload to start with, but if you need to make a small correction for any reason, you can do that here as long as you're a super user. You also have the option to recalculate your usage. So if you've edited this usage data, we still always store the raw data in the back end as we collected it from the network or it was delivered into the API. And so if you want to revert changes you've made, you can recalculate the usage here, and this will go and look at what we have stored in the database and revert this back to what it was. So hopefully that is useful to you, and you can see how you can implement different policies here, both on a network and from a billing perspective. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to jump on our forum, give us a call, or shoot us an email.